Part 2. Pax in Bello. Peace in War. November 11th. Stillness. Intense stillness. Try as I will to throw it off, it muffles my bed like a heavy blanket, or like one of those mosquito bars that smother you in Italian hotel bedrooms. I lie underneath on my back, always on my back, immovable and straight, holding my ears rigidly clear of the pillows, listening. No sound. No faintest echo of this glowing gala night. Only stillness. Soft, spongy, clinging, stifling me in its pale web. The garden, all I can see of it by turning my head very gently to the right. I must not stir by a hair's breadth that distant part of my bed where my aching feet abide, is full of white moonlight. The black trees that frame the clustered tents are spattered and silvered with it. Hoary old trees. Safe Red Cross tents with eyes of yellow light that twinkle boldly to the lady who floats aloft. 2 months ago the moon gathered bombers as an arc lamp gathers moths, a thing of dread. And now how large and round and clear she sails, and what soft security she floods upon our garden. This is the 1561st day of the war. After 1561 days, the women of the world may go to bed with quiet hearts. My heart isn't quiet. It is pounding and throbbing under the bedclothes like one of those airplane motors that are always disturbing the air of Neuilly when I most long for peace. I wish I could hear an airplane now. It is desperately still. If the doughboy who twangs the wretched banjo that daily jars through my pain were only marooned in the garden, I would give any 3 soldiers 5 francs each to start a row. Not a sound. Every patient who can hitch himself along on crutches has got into Paris somehow. Armistice night. The culmination of the most terrible 4 years in the history of the world. The only wounded left, out there in the tents, are like me, tied to a bed. Too ill to do anything but listen. Listen and strain for a celebration we can't hear, and perhaps can't feel. Our war isn't over, as the femme de ménage, cleaning woman, put it this morning. Strange somebody isn't traveling over the Neuilly boulevards. There should be at least 1 belated taxi with a horn, carrying a smart French colonel just arrived from the front toward Paris. At least 1 cab drawn by a tired horse, pounding back with a family of petits bourgeois, middle-class people, who keep early hours because of the gosses, kids. Utter silence. All day the hospital walls have trembled with the reverberation of great trucks from the munition factories along the Seine. Trucks carrying the French workpeople to Paris. Through the double door of my room, which usually deadens hospital movements, I have caught a murmur of suppressed excitement. Nurses' voices raised above the usual careful level. White shoes pattering at the double-quick. The surgeon, urging the young ladies in his warm southern manner to hurry along and fêter la victoire, celebrate victory. When he came to do my dressing, he was very impatient to be gone himself. His face looked worn above his white gown. He isn't altogether glad the war is over, I surmise. More surgeon than humanitarian, and not very keen to leave his bone grafts at number 1 and his Paris nights for private practice in a sleepy, stolid southern city. Hours since I've heard the least twitter in the corridor. As deserted as the garden and the street. If I thought it would make a sharp, strident sound, I would lift my left hand and squeeze the bell that is pinned to the bed near my left ear. But it only lights a small, red, silent electric flame, they tell me. What's the use? Dr. M promised me a bottle of champagne to drink to victory. It didn't come. Missot, my Red Cross nurse, was more disappointed than I. She had never tasted champagne, and glowed at the wicked prospect. Rather dismally, At last, she tucked in the extra pillows, my only substitute for a change of position through the night, and wondered whether the trams had stopped running. She, too, wanted to get away from the wounds and pain, to see and touch this Paris gaiety of which she had heard so much in North Dakota, and scarcely dared open her eyes to when she arrived. Poor boulevard sights. No, I couldn't have drunk to victory with someone who did not know what Paris was like last June, when the Germans were only 40 miles away, and champagne is a mild stimulant by comparison with this pain of mine. A black, misty, mounting flood, which sweeps me off, tosses me back and forth like a cork on its tide. The tossing and swirling do not muddle my head. Somehow they clarify. Never did my senses feel so acute. If one of the wounded men should get up and dress, eluding his night nurse, and drag himself over to the iron fence that shuts in our garden, and whisper to a little French girl through the bars, I should surely hear her answering, "I love you." Yes, but there isn't even a lover's whisper in the clear, crisp, empty air that comes through the window. The little French girls have forgotten the wounded doughboys. They are in the centre, dancing around, laughing, drunken, vociferous, rich American officers, generals' aides and quartermaster captains, on the once more lighted boulevards. What pictures swim before me! If I can't hear, I can at least see. Rainy French ports, mellow old French cities, barren French villages, all full of olive-drab, brown-faced Americans, celebrating the armistice. Dazed they must feel in the mud of our camps, the manufactured cheer of our canteens, the high efficiency of our railway centers. Just so much stage scenery now. But the hospitals are not stage scenery. Base 15, 7A. Evacuation Hospital number 1. Bitter reality. I see a wounded soldier with hollow Lincoln eyes and a lantern jaw. He has a hole in his abdomen. He is crying for water. What is it like at Mont Notre Dame tonight? The petit chasseur, little servant, breaks in on my visions. It is only at this evening hour, when my nurse is gone, that he dare thrust his clipped Butte de Montville head, with its impishly demure round face, inside my door. A big envelope with the embassy stamp. Out of it this huge proclamation, which was placarded all over the walls of Paris this morning. République Française. Conseil municipal de Paris. Habitants de Paris. C'est la victoire triomphale. Sur tous les fronts, l'ennemi vaincu a déposé les armes. Le sang va cesser de couler. Que Paris sorte de la fière réserve qui lui a valu l'admiration du monde. French Republic, City Council of Paris, residents of Paris. Victory, triumphant victory. On all fronts, the vanquished enemy lays down arms, the blood will cease to flow. Paris shall leave her remarkable reserve, which has earned the admiration of the world. Let us give full course to our joy and our enthusiasm, and force back our tears, to bear witness of our infinite gratitude to our great soldiers and their unconquerable leaders. Let us decorate all our houses with the French colors and those of our dear allies. Our dead may sleep in peace. The sublime sacrifice that they have made of their lives to the future of the race and the safety of the patrie, homeland, will not be sterile. For them, as for us, the day of glory has come. Long live the Republic! Long live immortal France! To it Tom, the thoughtful sender, has appended a P.S. Long live immortal France! But don't regret your remoteness from the day of glory. Paris is not nearly as grand as during those epic days and nights of endurance just before Chateau Thierry. I cannot see the end of the greatest war in the history of the world, and the greatest ordeal that France ever withstood, in the light of a football rally. I should like to talk to Caesar Franck tonight and hear him play stately, towering symphonies, or to stand on the height with Saint Genevieve, very late after the turmoil has subsided. Looking down under a chill, unemotional, watchful moon over Paris, city of cities, asleep. All very well for Tom to talk in this magnificent vein. He is there, in the midst of the turmoil. If he really hates it so much, why did he not come out instead of sending a messenger? This is the first day since I reached the hospital, more than 3 weeks ago, that I have had no visitors. Natural, but depressing to be alone and detached on a day of collective emotion. Tom is right, all the same, about the grandeur of the days of trial. They come back to me, one by one, scenes in a picture show far more real, more immediate than the stifling peace of this night. The second day of the March offensive. The big gun has been aimed at the heart of France for 24 hours. Paris has already established an attitude, the attitude that bombardment is a thunder shower, whose lightnings usually strike amiss. Crowds on the boulevards, taxis circulating, sad faces, tense faces, absent faces, but never a shadow of fear. B.B., hurrying from the Red Cross to lunch, stops to buy a paper from the old woman at the kiosk opposite the Madeleine. Bonjour, madame. I haven't heard that famous gun of yours for at least half an hour. Have you? Que voulez-vous, monsieur? Vite-qu'il d'argent. It has to have its lunch. The Portuguese night nurse looks at me oddly. I must have laughed aloud. She thinks I am wandering. She was in town this afternoon, and still wears a dreamy look that matches a rose tucked in her belt. She tells me, with her shy smile, to rest, as she attaches the long rubber tube and turns the cock that sends a cold flood of Dakin solution through my bandages. Rest! Paris haunts me too. I address questions, persistently, obstinately, to the dim blue and white figure moving about my room. Have they taken away the last of the sandbags that muffled the fountains and statues so deeply as the spring wore on? And the last of the decorative strips of paper that were supposed to save plate-glass windows from shock? The Rue de la Paix went in for diamond patterns. The Champs-Élysées ran to cubism. Even the toy shop window on the Rue Saint-Honoré sported strange geometrical beasts. What has become of those delightful yellow balloons which rose into the pale sky after sunset? Their cords were to entangle the tails of the swooping German planes. One might think Paris were coquetting with war, but for the faces. Absent faces. The crash of the Bertha brought them back to the scene they were ignoring with a sort of quiver. Faces. What did you read on the faces tonight, mademoiselle? No answer. She is gone. Only stillness, stifling me in its pale web. Those April nights, nights of the offensive, the stillness was even more profound than now, even more stifling. A breathless hush that brought the battle close, close, close. Suddenly, corkscrewing into an unquiet dream, the siren, French guns, another alert. The cellar? Ça manque de charme. It lacks charm, as the stolid chambermaid says. I will stay in bed. But the concierge is ruthless. He goes on ringing a huge bell that hangs just outside my window. He bangs at my door. The Swiss head waiter, shrieking, "À la cave," to the wine cellar, has turned out all the lights before I get downstairs, and dives before me into subterranean regions that date from an ancient convent. In the first cave, the sports of the hotel are already uncorking champagne. In the second, a Spanish scene. A card table with one flickering candle, a lady in black evening dress, and 3 swarthy masculine faces, In the fourth, the cowards, maids and valets of every nationality gloomily whispering. In the last, brightly lighted with electricity, the beau monde, fashionable society, trying to look as if it were their custom to spend the night entombed in a 7-foot vault lined with dusty bottles of old wine. Mr. Ford, of the American Red Cross, protected by Mrs. Ford, has all his valuable papers under his Louis XV chair. He is making notes for his stenographer. The other males, though British officers, are less Olympian. In the tilt of their expressionless heads against the unyielding stone walls, one divines a secret grievance. Wives have decreed this ignominy. The red-haired refugee from Russia, with her Bowery accent, her 3-year-old boy and her 16-year-old French nurse, take up a great deal of room. So does Mr. de Peyster's Russian wolfhound. His mistress, with her pearls about her neck and her diamonds in her wrist-bag, summons Monsieur le Directeur to demand a carpet for the next occasion. Mrs. Thompson, in her green sweater, also finds it impossible to make her chow comfortable. He has to yield his gilt chair to Miss Ames, who has slipped a fur coat over a gorgeous dressing gown that belies her uniform hat. She has come from her canteen at the front, where they are bombed every night, for a quiet night in Paris. The prettiest of last season's debutantes puts up with a pathetic little stool. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, do you suppose that was the Grand Palais? I wish we could hear more, don't you? The only thing that I don't like about this cellar is that it muffles everything. Couchez, Chow, couchez tout à fait. Lie down, Chow. Lie down this instant. Mrs. de Peyster, do you mind keeping your dog the other side? Tout à fait, Chow. I am a little nervous, not about bombs. This is such a small room for a fight. I don't mean on your lap. We do love to treat them like children, don't we? How discouraging. I had heard today from somebody who really knows that things were better in Washington. Oh, no, my dear, it was a major who told me. Well, anyhow, Baker is in this raid. I hope he heard that one. What does that waiter want, snooping around? They have sent him to see that we don't take any wine. 10 bottles disappeared last time. John, did you see where my husband went? Yes, they say I was a German general in British uniform who ordered them back. Waiter, please go up and get me a glass. I want some mineral water. You don't think I ought to ask him to go up, but you know as well as I do that man is a German spy. If any of his old bombs drop in our court. I steal up and climb the stairs. The sharp sound of the explosions is dying away. The French cannonading has stopped. Soon the breloque siren will announce the end. I stick my head out of my high window. Utter blackness, blackness that denies the very possibility of light. Yet through it, on the street below, is already traveling something warm and vibrant and human. The Paris crowd. It is as if a river, obstructed for a moment, has found its normal course again. The murmur is slightly subdued, confused, but eddies of easy laughter, voices disputing as to where the last bomb fell, float up to me. Here come the bells, blessed bells, sober bells. Nobody who has not heard them tolling peace, tolling sleep, through the solemn nights, knows the fortitude of the soul of France. Not a bell tonight. I will call the little nurse and ask her what victory has done to the soul of France, that Neuilly broods over it so glumly. No, she would not understand. I must just keep on remembering and remembering. June. The shadow of a new sound haunts the silent small hours. Something like a heartbeat of the night itself, or like a breath, a sighing breath, shaking me in my bed. So, during the Marne, they say, could Paris hear the guns of the front. In this breath, American guns at last have their share. Traveling through the darkness toward Neuilly, in our ambulances come our young veterans, armless, eyeless, choking with gas and blood, exactly as the veterans of Mons and Verdun have come before them. The sound gradually ebbs away. A crack of daylight. I open my curtain. The garçon de café, coffee boy, opposite has paused in his white apron rolling up of iron shutters to read the Matin. A working girl passes with her nose in a paper. Next, an old gentleman in grey spats, and an American private, both lost in the news. Better or worse? How can I help shrieking down from my 5th floor? Is it worse or better? Plutôt mieux, rather better, answers Charles, bringing my roll and jam. We have counterattacked. What right have I to rolls and jam? Never was such intense and exquisite weather. The air is gold and light, the sky brilliantly soft and blue, the sun burning hot on the wooden pavements, the shadow of the grey arcades along the Rue de Rivoli cool as crystal. The grey-green spring with its delicate yellow flowers is turned into glowing summer. Red roses on midinettes, shopgirls' breasts, to tempt the American soldier. Red roses at the street corners, red strawberries and cherries on pushcarts. Women with carmine lips buying pink collars at the stalls outside the galerie, and foolish little dolls to charm off the Gothas. Red taxis laden to the roof with luggage. Red Cross flags. Red Cross uniforms. Red Cross trucks. Outside the headquarters, the latter stand in rows, full of packing cases, full of nurses. As doctors distribute gas masks, the truck drivers read Paris Midi. Are they any nearer? Again, every passerby is lost in a journal. Even the privates of the Signal Corps, playing baseball in the noon hour in the Tuileries Gardens, stop sometimes to take a look at the stars and stripes. The demoiselles de magasin, middle-class shopgirls, sitting on spidery iron chairs and eating their lunch out of paper packages, comment admiringly on these broad-shouldered sweethearts who occasionally dart up to proffer a greeting in argot. Pretty much at home, says Bob, just back from the front, as he leads the way towards the best restaurant on the Champs-Élysées. Yes, we Americans are pretty much at home in Paris now. We have a right here. There is no condensation in the accent of the maître d'hôtel, head waiter at the restaurant the Ambassadeur. Melon, sir? Sturgeon, sir? One only gets it 2 or 3 times a year, sir. Bob orders melon, sturgeon, and champagne. Outside the hedge that shelters this perfection, the chestnut trees and the benches where fluffy children used to watch Mr. Punch and lovely ladies used to preen their parasols, are sprayed with dust from heavy military camions, trucks. The young persons who sit on the benches now are tawdry. The babies who play about are grimy little refugees. From the windows of hotels and great houses loom the bandaged heads of the wounded. Luckily, Bob does not look through the green barrier. He carried one of his men 3 miles on his back yesterday, but he does not tell me that. He gazes blissfully at the spotless cloth, at the red roses and red awnings, and he yields up his 100 francs with a murmur of praise for the arts of Paris. But just as we start, a woman thrusts La Liberté through the hedge. The Marines are attacking. L'Intransigeant, La Liberté, another raucous, breathless newspaper hour, the hour of the afternoon communiqué, report. The people on the boulevards walk like inchworms, digesting a paragraph with every inch. Nobody speaks. They have advanced a little. Night is here again, or rather the long, blooming summer twilight that lasts till 10:30. Over the strident sounds and colors and anxieties of the day it drops like balm, drops from a soft gray sky shot with rose and yellow, bathing the Seine and its springing bridges, brooding over the nobly massed roofline of the Louvre, glooming on the gardens where sculptured trees and tender nudes blend their genre types in a rapt dream of beauty. In the dream, sharing it, walk France and America, together and not alien. Yet there is a private standing alone. What does he see? A stone basin, an obelisk, an arch with a sharp sliver of new moon above it. Arizona taking the measure of Napoleon. Can Arizona save Paris? Must these lovely stones, fragile as Venetian glass they look to our eyes tonight, be sacrificed in the process? If need be, says Tom, who sits on the bench beside me, staring at the empty spaces in the fading light, taking account of the incisive meaning of Paris in French and world psychology. He has lived with the Germans in Brussels. He knows what it would be to see them here. What does this new brand of young American not know about Europe? Many things, certainly, that Henry James and Whistler never learned through years of eager application. More Europeanized, though they don't realize it, than the self-conscious Europeanized of the old days, who cultivated sophistication and a French accent at the Beaux-Arts. The new type has a right to speak of the destinies of Europe. Paris must not be taken. Darkness falls. The long vista to the Arc de Triomphe is pricked with peacock green and orange. The stage is set for a raid. In another half-hour the heavens will be alive with light, and the shrubberies crackling with shrapnel. The translucent screen of beauty that has interposed itself for an hour between us and the front again turns plate glass. Out of the night comes the voice of a French interpreter talking with an American friend. Peace? Buy an inglorious peace with Paris? Can Germany believe it? Athens was destroyed, Florence was devastated by the Spaniards, and her beautiful ring of encircling villas razed to the ground. History repeats itself. We should have no joy in our houses, in our Louvre, in our Notre Dame, if to save them we have to consent to peace. But how we shall love them, Colonel, or what remains of them, if a noble battle waged by your troops and ours together saves them for us. The Portuguese night nurse is bending over me again with the same shy, troubled smile. You're hypo. Thank heaven. This effort to reconstruct the past keeps my heart going too fast. My American friends, will not Saint Genevieve include them in her protective meditation tonight, up there on her blue height? Americans who have become bone of the bone of Europe, through sharing so intimately in her agony. Men and women both, they have a stake here now. Few of them will be able to go back to their old lives on the old terms. Queer. I can't remember their names. I can't see their faces. I am floating out into a region where only shadows exist, misty and dark. Sounds. I hear something at last, a horn, a taxi horn, and louder, vaguer, denser echoes, like the roar of New York. The celebration is reaching Neuilly. No, it must be the universe roaring in my ears. A universe freed from the bonds of war, whirling madly in the dark. But there was the moon, distilling peace and security in our garden. Stifling, I turn my head. She is gone. In the garden, too. Only the whirling dark. November 12th. A wonderful sunny morning. Miss O wears a white uniform by way of celebration, instead of the ugly gray one the Red Cross invented for its foreign service, and fresh and pink and happy it makes her look. There must have been a letter from her North Dakota man last night. She opens the French window wide upon the garden while I eat my breakfast, and lets St. Martin's summer in. Just outside, a very pretty tableau. Some of the wounded boys stole a captured trench mortar from the Place de la Concorde and dragged it all the way to Neuilly in the small hours. Now they are painting it, with a grandly possessive air, while French and American flags are collected for a procession. Morning is the easiest and most normal time in a hospital bed, because the busiest. The number of commonplace duties to be got through gives an illusion of useful living. Everything is an event. Having one's temperature taken, having one's wounds irrigated, sponge bath, fresh linen, luxuries I fully appreciate after the French tent. 2 minutes with Miss G, the assistant head nurse, whose skin is always creamy, whose blue eyes are always jolly, however early she makes her rounds. Even the femme de ménage is an event. When the whistles and bells began to announce the signing at 11 o'clock yesterday morning, the femme de ménage was on her knees scrubbing my floor. Sharply she lifted her broad, brown peasant face, pushed back her straggling gray hair with 2 dripping red hands, then leaned her great bare arms on the rim of her pail, rested there, looking toward my pillow, an expression of slow and poignant beatitude spreading over her seamed cheeks, till even the deep-set corners of her eyes and lips were trembling with it. C'est le pied, madame. Mon garçon sauvé. It's peace, madame. My son is saved. 2 tears rolled down into the pail. C'est la joie. Depuis si longtemps qu'on a été fermé. It's joy. It's been a long time closed. It is so long that we have been closed. Yes. Suddenly our hearts are wide open, full of something bright to incandescence, the flame of all the lives that will no longer be snuffed out. Mon Notre Dame, Rick, Stuart. It must be that those boys are safe. It must be. Still, the robust old woman leaned her arms and her heavy breast against the pail, looking at the American propped on her pillows. But the war isn't ended for Madame. Nor for all those poor soldiers who, like Madame, were wounded toward the last. They won't get the same care that the others did. In the tramways already people don't get up to give the mutilés, disabled, their seats. Nor for me. The war isn't over. No, I lost my other son at the Chemin des Dames, the twin of this one. Clever he was. The cost of living going up. Oui. C'est comme ça la maudite guerre. That's how it is, their damned war. The last phrase rolled up from the voluminous depths of her skirts in the rich, lusty voice that adds Voltairean commentary to her morning scrubbings. She has found her normal self again, and her normal quarrel with society. La maudite guerre. Theirs, not ours. Theirs, the government, the bourgeois, the rich. We fought it, her tone implied, because we must, and because indeed we couldn't have the Boches marching in. But we are realists. We demand now why you, the rich and powerful and intelligent, did not find some less disastrous method of saving us and yourselves. Against me, Madame Manguin, no relation to the general she wishes me to know, bears no grudge. I have suffered, and Miss O and I do not treat her just as an obstruction to the floor. Mademoiselle is good, she says to me every day of my nurse, and would teach her French in return for this human decency if Miss O were not too shy to venture a word. Madame Manguin is Miss O's first experience of class distinction and class degradation. On her self-respecting North Dakota farm, to scrub was part of the day's work. She is profoundly shocked by the subjection of this generic French army in patched blue gingham, which steals into the hospital at 7 a.m. and glides over every inch of the floor space on meek knees before noon, pushing its pails out of the way of the scornful white shoes of the nurses and the cursing military boots of the medical staff. Madame Manguin is very conversational this morning as she swabs my linoleum. Recounts how she and her daughter, an old maid, more's the pity, celebrated the armistice with cousins near the Bastille. Whispers that the monsieur in the next room is more rich than poor. He has a rug and an open fire. Laments that butter is getting scarce. Fears that her son will have difficulty in finding a job. Her son has, nevertheless, had advantages. For lack of them, she has had to do hard manual work all her life. An orphan she was, brought up on a farm by public charity, placed in service, married to a day laborer, who became paralyzed and was 15 years in dying. A year after his death, her 2 sons are taken by the army. one returns. What does victory mean to me, madame? Monsieur and Madame A.S., announces Miss O. The femme de ménage reverts to type, slops her way humbly out of the door as the visitors come in. They are delighted with the childish tableau of the doughboys in their trench mortar. Madame has brought fruit and jelly for the invalid, and it is characteristic of the poet's sympathetic kindness to be the first, before any American friend as it happens, to cheer me with a description of Armistice Day. His blue eyes are like a summer river, reflecting one delicious image after another. This writer of the gray-gold beard and the subtle intelligence loves to brush elbows with his humblest fellows, to smell their dirt and sweat, savor their racy jokes. Je suis très, très populaire, vous savez, très démocrate. Very much of the people. I am very, very popular, you know, very democratic. And yesterday, all his disillusions about the war were swamped by the great wave of joy that overwhelmed the Paris streets. What a sense he gave me of the beloved city suddenly translated from its drab war sadness. Suddenly all brilliant flags, white armistice streamers, embracing people, variegated soldiers and processions, especially processions which formed in one kaleidoscopic pattern, dissolved, formed in another pattern. From every gray street and square they emerged, spontaneously generated. French schoolboys in long, singing columns, dragging enormous guns after them. American and British soldiers in huge motor trucks. Workmen in blouses. Employees of the Samaritain or the Bon Marché with banners. Housewives, refugee children in uniform, guarded by Sisters of Charity. A.S. used an expression similar to Madame Mangin's. Something about a closed vessel suddenly opened to sun and air and happiness. Absolutely natural and right, he thinks, the demonstration, and adequate because it gushed up from the tired and sad old town like a fountain of new life. His great interest after processions was in individuals. He and Madame S., who was sustaining his enthusiasm like the good French wife she is, kept interrupting each other to describe this or that person. Do you remember the old concierge, who had certainly never emerged from her lodge since 1870, as she wore, Mademoiselle, exactly the clothes of the period? She was leading a group of school children. That was the queer part. Hobbling ahead of them, beating her crooked old arms to make them sing the Marseillaise. Allez, chantez la République. Come, sing to the Republic. And the washerwoman with a basket on her arm, who said to A on a street corner, everybody is happy. I, too, am happy for the patrie. Yet I remain all alone. And the one-legged mutilé who stumped ahead of 3 or 4 rows of wheeled chairs pushed by Red Cross nurses, calling, make way for the embusqué, rear guard. Yes, mademoiselle, and they were singing, those poor fellows, in chorus. Mourir pour la patrie, c'est le sang le plus beau. Dying for the homeland, it is the most beautiful. The crowd was absolutely silent as they passed. Suddenly, a woman in black rushed forward, holding out both arms, but before she reached the first mutilé, she stopped with a gesture I shall never forget and took off her hat. Then, holding it clasped to her breast, she walked down the line, kissing each man on both cheeks. Beautiful, said the poet, wiping his eyes. Later. A string of callers. As I lie here alone, I wait impatiently for their coming. But as soon as my grey room and my quiet are invaded, I long to be again remote. Remote and immobile on my high bed, not obliged to move even a muscle. Or a lip. Like a medieval lady carved on a stone tomb. Such a lady, with her hair in 2 braids over her ears, must have fretted when she heard the French Revolution raging outside her dusky cathedral nave. Yet when the stained glass was shattered and voices poured in on rifts of light, she too would have cringed. For instance, at the sound of the peace bells, the American Red Cross thronged to the Place de la Concorde. There, while French mothers, how many thousands of them, were praying, it executed a snake dance under the leadership of some of its most famous majors. This was reported by Mary with no arrière-pensée, ulterior motive, as to the suitability of serpentining, as she removed laundry and jam for my comfort from her flowered bag. I don't know what I should do without this gently cheerful little visitor who came, as usual, in her with her blue veil and cape over her nurse's aid's uniform, then hurried back to her ward. Heavy convoys of American wounded have been arriving since last night at the ambulance. Terrible, inconceivable as it seems, one of our divisions in the Argonne attacked yesterday morning. The psychology of these gentle, passionate, well-bred, brown-haired American spinsters who, after 2 or 3 years of nursing gas and wounds, in hospitals sometimes bombed and shelled, yet take pleasure in the street celebration, amazes me. Elizabeth, my second visitor of the species, was glorying besides in the harshness of the armistice terms. As I think it over, she, who nursed largely in Belgium, is the only hater, not excepting the French pupil nurses, I have seen. The only person thinking about Germany's humiliation as the reverse of our triumph. S.'s joy in the streets was not that. It was joy in the world's, especially the French common people's, liberation. Tom, who appeared next with Vernon Kellogg, had felt no joy at all, but was bent on amusing. As by the story of the French soldier who was tearing along so full of enthusiasm that he inadvertently collided with a horse, and, nothing daunted, clasped the animal fervently, shouting, "Vive les chevaux! Long live the horses!" I suppose I laughed now and then, though what I was chiefly aware of was the niceness of these 2 busy Hooverites journeying out here to provide eyes for the blessé. Tom looking distracted. The Food Administration plus the CRB drive him hard. Pale, too. When I first knew him last year in the Red Cross, he was rosy enough to live up to his college nickname, and had a childlike and disarming smile. The bureaucrats of French food are doing their best to make him look like a worried old man. As for V.K., who also belongs to the Napoleon race for stature, and is surely something of a genius, he, too, is flogging his energies with his nerves. Well, interesting to note that every nation reports its own people. The Americans made the town hot. Seized taxicabs, put abri, shelter, signs on them, piled inside and on the roof, and drove down the boulevards blowing horns and shooting off revolvers, to the amazement, if not the disgust, of the natives. Took complete possession of the Café de Paris, threw out first the waiters, then the gendarme police, rifled the cave, kept on the lights, and guzzled till 2 in the morning. Tom had an encounter with one drunken captain, who asked him to buy for him, as he didn't speak the damned frog language, an American flag from a passing taxi driver. The French chauffeur refused to sell. The captain offered 50 francs. No, not at any price. The captain insisted, with fury, that an American officer must naturally have a prior right to his own flag. And when Tom said he certainly couldn't buy this one, roared out, "I believe you're nothing but a damn frog yourself." Of course, our compatriots went in strong for mignonets. Tom said one of his finest impressions was in a side street off the Boulevard de Capucines, where a triumphant voice issued from the dark, "I got a girl, Herb, come on!" And a friend of his achieved success by addressing every good-looking lady in his best American French, "Mademoiselle, la guerre n'est pas encore finie." "Comment? Pas encore finie? Non, il faut donner un dernier coup." Whereupon, an embrace. "Miss, the war isn't over yet." "What do you mean, not over yet?" "No, we must give it a final blow." The celebration, they explained, was very limited in area, limited almost to the boulevards. To drive down the Champs-Élysées and the Rue de Rivoli was to feel on the outward fringe, close enough to get the throb and thrill, yet apart. The center of the thrill was the Place de l'Opera, which, viewed from a tall building nearby, was like a great swarm of far-off people enraged in some gigantic demonstration, which attained dignity and even mystic grandeur in the blue afternoon mist. Dr. Kellogg reports that his wife has started for Lille in Belgium. To think I might have been with her. He is off to Poland. I wonder if this professor of biology will ever go back to his laboratory. Far afield he has wandered. And Tom, who hopes Hoover will soon liberate him from Paris for something more adventurous. What is to become of him? If he had not gone to Belgium from his college sociology, he might take his place as a young radical in the office of some New York journal. But now, how can he use his thoroughly aroused will to power and his first-hand knowledge of the inner springs and devious roots of European economics? All the visitors gone, at last. Queer to call up the reflection of the armistice celebration in their varying temperaments, as the grey dusk thickens and the black fog of my pain. Take Tom's reaction. He hated the festivities. They offended his artistic sense, tarnished the greatness of the hour. Only perfect silence could have satisfied him. But humanly speaking, he thought it entirely decent for the AEF to yell and get drunk and indulge its appetites, while Major E, of the American Friends Unit, suffered the most intense shame to see American officers chinning themselves on the gold chandeliers of the Café de Paris, swilling champagne, running so much more amok than the other Allied officers who had suffered so much more in the war. Major E saw I was sailing into a dusky region, set down his big basket of hothouse fruit with quiet sympathy. If not so roused, would have liked to tell me pretty stories. One about a sailor boy in the Rue de la Paix, who fell out of his procession and shinnied up a fluted column to Paquet's balcony to get a kiss in return for a rose. Midinette? There this very unmajorly major faltered, almost blushed. New experience in his sober life to kiss his way out of a circle of laughing, painted girls. Garden of Eden conditions, he apologized. Not at all what it would seem at home. As for Walter Lippmann, who turned up with a cloudy look last of all, probably he did not even see the street. He did not even see the street scenes. What he saw was President Wilson's face, thrown on a screen above the great crowd in the Place de l'Opera. A face greeted with enormous emotion, cheered far beyond those of Clemenceau and Lloyd George, by a crowd preponderantly French. The severity of the armistice terms is dire for Germany, W.L. believes, still more so for the Allies. He had been reading Gauvin in the Journal de Débat, who significantly points out tonight that the armistice makes no allusion to the 14 points, and that the President's peace program is purely theoretical, must now be developed in conformity with circumstances. If this is the tone of a very liberal authority, Wilson must surely come to France. No use. The pain detaches me from politics, from my bed, hurls me out into feverish space with a queer sense of homecoming. I seem to belong in this vague sphere. Subconsciously I wait for it, long for it. That is why I'm so impatient when I have to fix my attention on daylight commonplaces. Why I find it so difficult to talk and listen. In this dimmer region is truth, glimmering, always eluding me, but glimmering ahead. Tonight I see faces. Rick's face, long and thin and black under the eyes, as it gets when he is thinking instead of flying. He believes the great crisis of his life is behind him, believes he has drawn a blank, is amazed to contemplate the fact of mere existence. Poor boy. I wish he would send me a telegram. But intuition will be all I have to go on till some day he saunters in. Ernest. He will have been drinking to victory in some tapestry-hung salon of the noblesse of Dijon. And when he gets back to his humble billet, he will pause, as he begins to remove his huge military boots, wrinkling his nose characteristically, to wonder what he is to do and what Catherine and Nancy are to do with the series of aesthetic and leisurely reactions on life, the taste for old wines and rare etchings, the love of the French humanities, the French tongue, and the French race that he has suddenly substituted for the hard drive of a law office in a rather barren Middle Western city. And Lucinda, her delicate dark face and great brown eyes, so much more lovely and tender than when I first knew her a year ago, are bending over her wounded privates at Dr. Blake's. Convoy after convoy pouring in. When will she come to see me? She has discovered her heart and her energy for the first time in nursing. Can she go back to a conventional New York life? Gertrude, in a YMCA hut crammed to the roof with the First Division, making a tremendous speech about peace. Eager listening soldiers who drink up her vitality and her unselfish ardor. The sort of understanding of variously average American men that she has acquired. What will she do with it now? And how will she do without their enormous reliance upon her, their need of her ultimate power of giving? What is to become of all of us? We might have been in a closed sack for 4 years. A giant hand has unloosed the string that binds it, tossed us free into space where we sprawl and kick and choke, because we have so much air to breathe, surprised, aghast. Michelangelo should be here to paint us in these catastrophic attitudes.